Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Kun.
Hi,
Hello.
madam. Good afternoon.
Hi. So both of you will give a bit context and we'll be sharing some thoughts which are really valuable. And then we are looking forward to a small interview between the two of you. Thank you so much.
Well, it's such a pleasure to be with you all today, and especially with all the students and the teachers, and also some great speakers. We are facing a climate emergency and a dramatic loss of biodiversity. The natural world, our own life support system, is being destroyed. And this is affecting already so much of our essential human rights, because this is as much an ecological crisis as a social and justice crisis. So I thought I would share a few thoughts about what I think brought us here. And this is greed and arrogance. The arrogance of human beings who have always considered themselves above nature and not part of it, entitled to plunder indefinitely and with impunity its resources while poisoning lands and oceans with plastic and chemicals. This undermining the balance of interconnected ecosystem, which could lead us to the collapse of human civilization. But also the arrogance of the Western countries who built their prosperity during colonization with the wealth and labor from Africa and the global South, and who continue today to acquire huge profits through multinational of mining and oil companies, ravaging our environment, while not assuming their responsibility to help poor countries to adapt to the climate crisis to which they have least contributed and are most affected. The arrogance also of men who don't include women at the highest level of climate policies when they are the most vulnerable to the effects of extreme weather events due to the role society have assigned to them as collectors of food and water, for example. But equally importantly, women are predominantly the ones providing solutions thanks to their skills and knowledge of capacity building and recovery. The arrogance also of adults who don't want to listen to the children around the world who are crying for fear for their future and angry for the lack of reaction and action from our leaders. And finally, the arrogance of the so-called civilized societies who are dismissing the knowledge and wisdom of indigenous people. These might be only 5% of the world population, but they are protecting 80% of our biodiversity. They are the best custodians of our forests, the two largest rainforests on the globe, the Amazon and the Congo Basin, as well as so many other wild places. They have lived for millennia in harmony with nature, living sustainably and protecting it. But they are paying a very high price. They are displaced, arrested, and often killed. Their rights are constantly violated, whether it is by illegal loggers or miners, multinational companies, and even sometimes by green projects. We have to defend the defenders and listen to their message. As stated by Nemonte Nenquimo from the Waorani nation in Ecuador, the earth does not expect you to save her. She expects you to respect her. And we indigenous people expect the same. So I really believe there is hope and so many opportunities to change the paradigm. Our economic and political model has failed. We are on the edge of socially and environmentally catastrophe. We need another vision which can reconcile the economy with more equality, justice, and our environment protection, in which we can prosper interconnected with one another as humans, as Dr. Jane Goodall said, and with nature. And this conversation has to start in schools because education has such a fundamental role to play, as this climate action project is showing so clearly today. And let me stress to finish that this so exciting and so hopeful challenge. With imagination and will, we can create a much better, fairer, healthier, and sustainable world with all of you.
Thank you so much. Now we are going to listen to Vanessa Nakate. Vanessa, it's wonderful to have you in this show.
Thank you so much. My name is Vanessa Nakate, and I'm a climate activist from Uganda. I started doing activism that was last year in the first week of January 2019. When you look at the historical events of our world, you realize that specifically the global north is responsible for all the mess that we are in, for all the challenges that we are in, for the destruction of our planet because of the massive exploitation, because of the corporate greed, because of the fossil fuel industry. This is why I decided to become a voice in the climate movement after realizing how much the people in my community and in my country at large were experiencing devastating impacts of climate change, and yet they were the least contributors to the CO2 emissions. Climate change Climate change puts a great threat on food security, on water security, on peace in my community, and especially on the gender equality in my country. As you have listened to Madame Esmeralda saying that girls and women are the most affected in the face of climate disasters. I started a project to help drive transition in my community because I wanted to do more than climate strikes. I wanted to drive action in the rural communities by providing solar panels and eco-friendly stoves in schools. And I did this so that communities can get to transition to renewable energy. We talk about all these technological solutions, but then we never put into consideration the fact that many communities cannot afford them or even access them. So through this project, we make the solar systems available to the schools and the eco-friendly stoves. In my country, literally every school uses firewood for preparation of food for the students, and they cannot stop using the firewood because the students would go hungry. So with this stove, it's an alternative to reducing the amount of firewood that is used by the schools, and also to educate the students, the teachers, and the parents about climate education, about the planet, about their role in fighting for a future that is livable and habitable for all of us. And through this project, I hope to see that many girls and women are empowered, many girls are educated. I believe that educating girls is one of the most important solutions that we need in fighting the climate crisis, because realizing that the climate crisis exacerbates the already existing gender inequalities in our communities, in our countries, in this world. I believe this is a solution that environmental circles do not talk about, and yet we need to talk about it. Enough with the technological solutions that will need funding, that will need so much research. This is a solution that we can actually do right now, putting girls in school and fighting the climate crisis so that we can stop them from being vulnerable to the climate disasters. I hope that the environmental movement, as it demands for technological solutions, it doesn't forget about the social solutions that can actually drive change right now. You have to understand that we will not have climate justice without social justice and without achieving every other sustainable development goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now head into an interview because I think that both of you are sharing really interesting thoughts. I also want to stress everybody to support Vanessa. We shared the GoFundMe earlier, and we will be doing it later on again. But please make sure to support her initiative. Thank you.
That was so inspiring, Vanessa. And I like so much the fact that you link also the gender problem to the climate crisis. So I would like you to explain maybe to us the challenges that faces women and girls in Uganda.
Thank you so much, Madame Esmeralda. when you look at the climate crisis and the impact it places on girls and women, it is something that the world is not talking about, and yet it should be talking about. Women and girls have been given roles by society, roles of taking care of household chores like collection of water from the wells or preparation of food. And in the face of climate disasters and everything has been lost to maybe floods or droughts, they have to do cheaper the work they have been doing in order to provide for their families. They have to walk very long distances in order to collect water in case of longer dry spells, and this exposes them to gender-based violence, and that is something that people are not talking about. Many girls are dropping out of school because their families cannot take care of them anymore. In my country, when a girl is getting married, the parents receive bride price, and many times these girls, if their families experience these disasters, they are forced to give up their children for marriage in order to reduce on the number of children in their homes, and also expecting a bride price from these men.
So that's another link that shows that we cannot solve the climate crisis without solving the poverty and the
Exactly.
and this is a big problem of the child marriages also in Uganda.
Yes, it's a very big problem because just in this period of the pandemic, many girls who are still in school have got pregnant, and there is no hope for them to go back to school. This is a very big challenge that really needs to be addressed so that girls can be protected in the face of disasters. Because where there is a pandemic, where there is a disaster, the inequalities that these girls were already experiencing are only doubled.
I wanted also to know when you started your action and your strikes, did you get support from teachers in the different schools?
Well, of course, when I started the strikes, honestly, the support wasn't there, not from family, not from school, not from the country itself. Because in school, there's certain there is a way they expect a girl to behave. There is a way they expect a girl to have certain values of dignity, of respect, and literally going to the streets is going against those values. Because when I went to the streets the first time, many people would say really ugly things, saying that maybe I'm trying to sell myself, because that is against society for a girl to stand on the streets with a placard, because many would think that she wants attention, she wants people to see that. So it was a challenge starting the strikes, because society has decided the roles that the girls should do, but then we, the activists like me, we are going against those roles, because it is not the role of society to determine what we are supposed to do.
Well, I think you had so much courage to start all by yourself. And when we talk about Greta Thunberg, who is another example, she also started alone. But we have to emphasize that it was much more difficult for you, considering the country, the culture, and what you just explained.
Yeah, that always quite very many challenges, especially in my country, because you have to go against school, you have to go against your family, because they don't understand what you are doing.
Did they
And
understand
actually,
your family?
my family didn't understand it in the beginning, and my friends as well. My friends thought that it was embarrassing for me to go to the streets, so they were not supportive in the beginning.
Another thing I wanted to ask you is the role of the media, because we might all remember the scandal that happened in Davos when you were cut off a picture of activists. And luckily, there was a big response everywhere, and especially on social media. But still, do you want to talk about the role of media and the fact that they are not talking enough about the global South voices?
Well, I think media has a very big role to play, because many people are not aware about the climate crisis, especially in the global south, and media can help in that But media isn't doing that. Media is erasing voices and stories from the global south, and this is hurting the climate movement because we cannot get the climate justice that we need if we do not include every voice. Using my example, when I was in Davos and I was cropped out of that photo, and also my message wasn't included in the article, that was an example of how media has idealized the climate movement to only be inclusive of white activists while erasing different voices. If media does not tell the stories, if media does not platform the stories of activists from the global south, then we will not get the action that we need. These activists need to tell their own stories. They need to be listened to. They need to be put on the front line. It is very sad to know that the global south is on the front line of the climate crisis, but it is not on the front page. And this is something that media has to change.
I think that's a very important message, and thank you for emphasizing that. I don't know if we still have time. I could go on for a long time. Koen, let us know if we have time.
You still have time, yes. It's just too important, I think. So please, let's do it for another few minutes. Yeah.
Vanessa, can you also explain what are the main challenges of the climate crisis in Uganda, in Africa in general?
Most of the countries in Africa, they heavily depend on natural resources for survival. That is for food, that is for water. And with the changing weather patterns because of the increase in global temperatures, African countries are being put at a risk of facing shorter and heavier rainy seasons in specific parts of the continent, and also longer and hotter dry seasons. Communities, maybe in my country, you find that there are regions that are experiencing massive rainfall in a short period of time. It's almost obvious now that every time it rains in my country, there is destruction. You're going to see it on the news. You're going to see people crying out to the government how they have lost their farms, how they have lost their homes. We have seen landslides sweeping people's homes. Even during this pandemic, we've seen the water levels of Lake Victoria rise, and these have destroyed people's houses at a time when people have to keep safe from the COVID-19 pandemic. They were also facing climate disasters that were pushing them to a point of being homeless, to a point of having no food at all, and to a point of being vulnerable to diseases. Because with the rise in the water levels, even toilets and all kinds of that were submerged, and all the water sources were contaminated. So in my country, climate change really threatens the food availability, it threatens the water availability, but those are just the primary effects. We need to also talk about the secondary impacts, what happens to a family after they have experienced these things. That is when we go into how the girl child is affected, how the women are affected after experiencing these primary impacts of climate change.
And do you think that the people and the leaders are joining the dots, connecting the dots, and know that all what is happening is due to the crisis of the climate?
No, I don't think so. And there is a lot of work to be done. Most of the people do not understand the connection between fossil fuel industry and the climate crisis. When you talk about climate change, the only thing they understand is tree planting. Tree planting is good, it is part of the climate fight. But then there is much more to the climate crisis. We need the ecosystems, but I feel like people also need to be educated about the other issues of the climate crisis, and this is still lacking.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. This was really inspiring.
You're welcome, Madame Esmeralda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nakate and Madame. That was incredibly inspiring. as a young woman and an aspiring climate activist, especially that message of that we can't have environmental justice without social justice. I thought that was so powerful. From behalf of everyone here today, I'd like to sincerely thank you both for joining us. It's been amazing. Thank you.